Hi, and welcome back to the Intentional Wealth Update from Morton Brown Family Wealth. I'm Dennis Morton here with my partner, Katie Brown. Katie, how are you doing?
Great. How are you today, Dennis?
Good. We had a plan to talk about one thing today, but we're gonna dive into one of our pet peeves. So the conversation went a little bit of a left turn earlier today. So Katie, today we're gonna talk about recessions, predicting recessions. When's it coming? When's it not? Why is this such a pet peeve for us?
We do talk about this often because it's constantly thrown at us, at consumers, at everybody. We pulled up an article from last July talking about, are we in a recession and what is a recession? The reality is recessions are a normal part of the business cycle. Businesses, our economy, it grows, it expands, and eventually you kind of hit that point of euphoria where emotion starts to take over, and then it contracts. That's the normal state, and it should be the expectation that we will go through these cycles, and that's okay. The thing that, where I think it gets to be our pet peeve is because it's made out to be such a challenge for everyone, and it doesn't have to be.
I know. We looked at a CNBC article that's kind of symptomatic of how recessions are presented. It was from a couple of weeks ago, where they asked people, "Do you think we're in a recession?" And a lot of them thought we already were in one. But also, have you prepared for it? And this idea that somehow you prepare for it, like that, what are you going to do differently? And the article advocated reducing debt or building up your emergency savings or reducing your spending. All good things, but that's not what you do just for a recession. That's what you do all the time. Like there's just a natural element to it. Whereas I think it sets up for people to be reactive. That you always have to be doing something differently if you think a recession's coming, whether you think it's not, right?
Right. And that's the danger too, that being reactive and leading with emotion. That can be dangerous in both up markets and down markets. We talk about this too, the studies with real returns versus investor returns. And oftentimes the gap there where investor returns are lower in almost every single study versus the actual returns received in the market. And that's because of the emotion. It's that constant feeling of, I need to do something. I need to change a strategy. I need to tweak. I need to stop spending, start spending. I need to borrow. I need to not. And that constant, whereas if you can kind of remove yourself from that and go back to your own plan, your own needs, and think a lot more acutely about how does this impact me? There might be a recession out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's your recession.
Right, right. That's so true. And the truth is, when the crisis does hit, whatever form it takes, and it's usually something we don't expect. Like we remember late 2019, early 2020. Are we in a recession? Are we going to go into a recession? Well, then a pandemic comes out of left field, and that's what causes. But truthfully, for every investor, there's a lot of times there's this feeling that no matter how conservative you were before the crisis, you always wish you were 10% more conservative. It's never quite right. And same thing on the upside. As aggressive as you might be with your stock selection or whatever it might be, you always wish you had a little bit more when things are going well. So we have to kind of step back and say, all right, can our plan tolerate this? Because we haven't legislated out of existence drawdowns and pullbacks. They happen, to your point, they're natural. It's like every other facet of our life, our health, it ebbs and flows. Our relationships ebb and flow. So do markets. And we just have to have that cognizance of not reacting all the time.
Right. But you know what I think is really great is if you are on top of your plan and you have a good understanding of your financial world personally, then all these different cycles, whether it's expanding or contracting, there are opportunities in there for you without derailing the plan that actually can enhance. So I think that there are some activities that can be done, but it doesn't have to be whatever the news or the world is saying, this is what you need to do now. It can be a better reflection of where you're at in your personal circumstance. And like I said, I think it can be opportunistic. It doesn't necessarily have to be threatening.
It even gets me thinking about personally one of the reasons why I entered this profession. So I kind of came out of college and started my working years right as the dot-com bubble was booming and then going bust. And I think you were the same way, kind of in that 1999, 2001 era. And it fascinated me because I was not new to investing, new to saving and all those things. And I couldn't understand all the scurrying that was happening. I didn't get why people were chasing it on the way up, and I didn't get why they were panicked on the way down. And that seed was planted in my mind. Fast forward a few years when I said, this is the profession I want to be in, that maybe that's not the right thing to do. Maybe these things do have boom and bust cycles happen. I think that helps to reflect on like how we responded to previous crises and saying, hey, we can get through this. And what did I learn about myself as you go through it? I learned that I didn't have to feel like I had to chase. And it's meant a lot more stability in how I think about the markets and investing.
Right.
So if we're wondering, are we in a recession? Is one coming? How do we know? Like, what's the actual process of knowing?
There are so many different definitions for what a recession actually is. I would say one of the more common ones that we hear is 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. But the National Bureau of Economic Research, and that's the bureau that typically calls the recession, says this is the beginning, this is the end. Their definition of recession is a period between a peak and a trough in the business cycle where there's a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy that can last a few months to more than a year. And so there are lots of different offshoots of that definition. And I think that's part of the challenge is that it's so subjective and squishy. So that's why there's always, are we in it? Are we not? Do we know? How do we know? And it's not really called, it's a backward looking call. So eventually the National Bureau will come out and say, yes, we were in a recession and it started on this date and it ended on that date. And by that point, we're out of it.
Right, right. And that's the thing is about being reactive. It affects your investment strategy or your planning strategy. By the time you know about it, you've missed the opportunity, and you probably should have been doing the opposite. There was a thing earlier today. Jonathan Farrow from Bloomberg tweeted out about a Bank of America Global Fund Manager survey, and he noted in November of 2022, recession odds were at 77% and have since declined to 24%. That's according to Bank of America's research. So that's the lowest since June of 2022. The prior peaks of recession odds were in March of 2009 and April of 2020. And what do we know about both of those?
Those
They
are
were the
interesting
bottoms
times.
for the market. So we don't know. We've said this before on these videos. We don't know where the bottom was. If it was October, November of last year, who knows? But it's very interesting to think that, sentiment got really low last year. And that usually does not, the recession timing doesn't always coincide with that.
Right. And something else to note, just from the National Bureau of Economic Research, since 1945, the average length of a recession is 11 months. And
Mm,
so, once again, I mean, we're looking at articles that started last summer. Maybe it started around then, maybe it didn't. We will be on the tail end of this recessionary period potentially, or it could drag on longer. Once again, we don't know, but would you do anything differently if
right.
you could?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And truthfully, I mean, 100 years ago, pre kind of the Federal Reserve era, we used to go from boom to bust. We used to go in depressions quite frequently. These cycles have become longer. Recessions have become, some of them moderated a bit. We get buildups in excess, like during the Great Financial Crisis, that get washed out. But these are kind of naturally evolving things, to your point, Katie.
There is a great distinction between a recession and a depression.
Mhm.
Depression is far, far worse than a recession. It's much deeper, it's much more prolonged. The Great Depression, like the biggest dip in that was 1929 to 1933. So we had 4 years there where unemployment was soaring around 25%. GDP was down like 30% during that time frame. To put that in perspective, in 2008, we had unemployment about 10%. We didn't have the same depth
Right.
of the depressionary period. And unfortunately, things have been put into place to help prevent depressions from happening again.
Right. Yep. Absolutely true. So I guess to kind of put a bow on this a little bit, the the idea is that whether a recession is coming or not, whether a bear market is coming or not, it's all guesswork. Like and truthfully, you don't need to guess it right. The antidote is the planning process and controlling the things that you can control, which is that's what we just continue to harp on here. I want to share one quick comment so we had a lot of recent fun events as a team. We went out to a hockey night for our group of 7 a couple of weeks ago. We're adding on our 8th employee here at Morton Brown here next week, which is really exciting. Katie, we got to go to a concert with our spouses and some friends recently. Who did you go see recently?
We went to the Journey concert
Yeah,
with Toto that opened,
yeah,
and it was so much fun. It was part of a setting the stage event through Valley Youth House. So all of the proceeds from the event, it was paired up with the PPL Center, but all the proceeds went to support Valley Youth House programming, which they provide a ton of programming, but all of it really to support at-risk youth. So whether working their way out of the foster care system to kind of learn life skills or family support. So I was thrilled to be there and support, and we had a blast.
We had a blast. Children of the 70s and 80s unite. We had a great time, and it was it was officially the first Morton Brown event that involved a confetti cannon. So
Yes.
it's definitely, I don't know if that's in the budget for next year to get that more often, but it was definitely awesome. So, all right, we appreciate any feedback. We got great feedback last week on the one-page financial plan. So if you have any comments or questions or want to talk through kind of what a recession means for you personally or what a recession means in the broader economy, we're always happy to take your questions. So until next time, we'll catch up with you soon.